Okay, here's where we start. 11 questions that sound rhetorical, but they're not. 11 absolutely genuine questions that you need to know the answer to, and so does your boss, and so do your coworkers. The first one is this. What is marketing for? Well, I know what marketing used to be for. What marketing used to be for is the guys in the factory would bring you the stuff they made and some money, and they'd say, here, go market this. That what marketing used to be for is buying advertising. That advertising and marketing were the same thing. But going forward, that's not what marketing is. Marketing is the act of telling a story to people who want to hear it, making that story so vivid and so true that the people who hear it tell other people. Which leads to question number 2. What are we allowed to touch? Because if the marketer isn't allowed to change the product, it's really hard to tell a story that's true, isn't it? If the marketer isn't allowed to touch the pricing, if the marketer isn't allowed to touch customer service, if the marketer isn't allowed to touch CSR, if the marketer isn't allowed to touch the way that we deal with the environment, then we can't tell all the stories we need to tell. That part of my megomaniacal theory of marketing is everything, so you're in charge of everything. And before we start down the road of what it is to do marketing that works, I think we need buy-in from the people around us as to what we can touch. Because it's certainly frustrating to say, I wish I could do this and be told you can't. And I wish I could do this and be told you can't. And I'm not saying you're going to start with a blank check, because you're not. What I'm arguing for is understanding what you can touch and what you can't. You know, the CFO is allowed to touch everything she needs to make the finances work. And the person in HR is expected to touch everything he needs to do the hiring and firing in a way that conforms to local laws and responsibilities. So the question is, what does the marketer touch? Question number 3, what can we as marketers measure? Now this is really fascinating because TV is totally unmeasurable. And I made many, many sales calls, thousands of sales calls when I was in the internet world at the beginning, inventing online direct marketing. And we would go to American Express and Procter & Gamble and other famous brands and say, we think you should buy this. And they would say, well, what's the response rate and what's the open rate? And they ask us all these measured questions. And I say, well, what's the response rate of those TV ads you spent $8 million on yesterday? And they don't know because you can't measure it. What's happened to marketing, thanks to Google, thanks to direct mail, thanks to email, thanks to everything that's going on online, is there's all these numbers out there. Almost everything digital is measurable. And we must ask the question, what can we measure? Because just because the number is there doesn't mean you care. And just because it's hard to measure doesn't mean you shouldn't. And we need to get really deep into what is it that we as marketers are supposed to do. The next one is, what can we change? And there's different kinds of change, right? There's the internal change of what am I allowed to change internally about what we make and who makes it? But there's also the external change, which is, as a marketer, am I trying to change my customers? And we're going to come back to this again and again. There's only 2 kinds of marketing. Marketing that takes advantage of the customer's wants and needs as they already exist, and marketing that shows up and says, no, I want to change people. I want to change perceptions. I want to change the way people spend their day. And there's no question, if you think about the great marketing success stories, almost all of them are about marketers who changed something, who changed the way we did a sport or the way that we meditated or the way that we dressed. That figuring out how to get someone to spend 2 or 3 or 4 hours a day with your site instead of a different site is a change. That doesn't mean all marketing should be about change, particularly if you don't have a lot of time or money. That marketing over and over again is about giving people what they need, not necessarily changing what they think they want. Okay, next one is, as a marketer, what promise am I going to make? What promise am I making to my boss? What promise am I making to the customer? Because successful marketing is pretty simple. You make a promise and you keep it. You make a promise and you overwhelm the person by exceeding the promise. You're in the promises business, What promise are you prepared to make? The next question seems out of left field, but it's so critical, which is this. What's the hard part? If you're trying to launch a new energy drink, I'll tell you what the hard part is. The hard part is shelf space. Because if you don't have shelf space, no one's going to buy it. No one's going to go online and buy your energy drink. They're going to buy your energy drink because they just finished a run and there it is at the convenience store. But the convenience store is jammed left to right, up and down with your competitors. If you can't articulate what the hard part is, it's going to be awfully difficult for you to focus all your time and energy on doing the thing that's difficult. Now, you should not avoid the hard part. What creates value isn't doing the easy stuff. It's doing the stuff that's difficult. But we have to have agreement internally as to what we think is hard about what we're about to do.